Hi everybody. We're just going to do 2 questions off of this sheet just to give you a little bit more practice and get a feel for what word problem is going to look like. The day 8 notes are going to have more word problems. So a couple things, just wanted to make sure that we all are good with the trig equation y is equal to a sine of bx plus d. We talked about the horizontal shift, but we're going to do, we're not going to see any horizontal shifts with word problems this year. Next year in pre-calc you probably will. We'll be working both with sine and cosine curves. So this is the equation that we'll be working with, where don't forget A is the amplitude, B is the frequency, and D is the vertical shift. Okay, another Ferris wheel question. A Ferris wheel completes 1 revolution every 18 seconds. At the top, a seat is 16 meters above the ground. At the bottom, it is 1 meter from the ground. Assume the rider boards the Ferris wheel at the bottom of the wheel. Write an equation that models this motion. We're not only going to write the equation, but we're also going to graph it. So a couple of things we know already from the example, from the problem. 1 revolution every 18 seconds. What is that? Is that amplitude? Is that midline? Is that period? Or is that frequency? Hopefully, you all said period. It's 1 revolution every 18 seconds. So it takes 18 seconds for the wheel to complete a revolution. It's pretty quick, very fast Ferris wheel. At the top, a seat is 16 meters above the ground. Recognize that as the maximum. And at the bottom, it's 1 meter. Recognize that as the minimum. All right, we've got some good information here. So we have that maximum is equal to 16. Minimum is equal to 1. Off of those two, I can get both amplitude and midline. So I can get my A value and my D value pretty quickly. So the amplitude will be 16 minus 1 divided by 2. 16 take away 1 is 15. Half of 15 is 7.5. Midline is going to be 16 plus 1 divided by 2. 16 plus 1 is 17. Half of 17 is 8.5. So I'm slowly building my equation. So the amplitude, that's my A value. And the midline, that's my D value. I need to find the B. I need to find frequency. Well, I know period is every 18 seconds it goes around. So that means I can set 18, or I will set 18 equal to 2 pi divided by B. And we did a lot. We started doing this a couple days ago. Cross multiply, you get 18. B is equal to 2 pi. So B is equal to pi over 9. And it looks a little bit weird, but that's going to be the frequency that we'll put in for our equation. So again, our equation is going to be y is equal to, now if we're getting on the Ferris wheel and we're going up and coming back down, is that a sine or is that a cosine curve? So if we look at the graph, of it, we're getting on here onto the Ferris wheel, and we're going to go up and then we're going to come back down again. You can't see my hand motion. I'm not going to put the graph in quite yet. If we put the minimum as 1 and the maximum at 16, and our midline is at 8.5, and we'll put a little dotted line here just to make sure we're centered. Is this a sine or a cosine curve? Hopefully you all said it's a cosine curve, but it's a cosine curve that's been flipped because we're starting at the bottom. So it's a negative 7.5 cosine. I'm going to move my equation over to the left a little bit more because I didn't save myself enough room. So y is equal to a negative 7.5 cosine. B value is pi over 9 times t, and there's a vertical shift of up 8.5. So here's my equation. What I would like to do is I like to now graph it. Even though it doesn't tell you to graph it, I'm going to graph it because it'll definitely help you when we start doing day 8 stuff. So we know we're going to get on the Ferris wheel here. How do we scale the x-axis? To scale the x-axis, again, we're going to be using period. We're going to get back to where we started from 18 seconds later. Remember all those quarters I kept talking about? Divide it in half, then divide it in half again. We're going to divide it up into our little quadrants. Half of 18 is 9. Half of 9 is 4.5. And the number between 9 and 18, the average of 9 and 18, or 9 and 18 divided up in half, or more quarters, is 13 and a half. So every critical value, every one of those quarters, something significant is happening. At 0, we are 1 foot off the ground, or I'm sorry, 1 meter. 4.5 seconds later, we're at the midline at 8.5 feet. Halfway through the ride, we're at the top of the Ferris wheel. We're going to come back down 3/4 of the time later, and we're going to finish 18 seconds later where we started from. And when we connect the dots, we get our upside down cosine curve, which looks like the Lululemon symbol. So upside down cosine curve, it's a reflection. Notice we had the negative out in front to show that is a reflection. We're getting at the bottom of the Ferris wheel. We're going up. 9 seconds later, we're at the maximum. 9 seconds later after that, 18 seconds later, all in total, we're back down to the bottom. All right, number 2. We can be given our information from a graph instead of an actual word problem. The number of visitors at a resort rises and falls during the year according to the graph in the diagram below. Determine an equation for this graph in terms of the month number t. Notice since it's starting at a midline, there's a midline here. We know that this is going to be a sine curve. And we need amplitude. We need the vertical shift, and we need the b value. It's not a negative sine curve because we're going up, and we're going to need the amplitude. So the amplitude is going to be the distance from the midline to the maximum, or from the midline to the minimum. And we can also get the max and the minimum from the graph. So there are a couple of different ways of finding amplitude and the midline. The maximum we see is 10,000 visitors, and the minimum, reading the numbers, is 4,000 visitors. So using that information, I can find the amplitude as 10,000 minus 4,000 divided by 2. So that's going to give a distance of 3,000, which is probably what you got when you subtracted the midline from the maximum. But I didn't find midline yet, but maybe you already did. So midline, I'm going to do it algebraically, where I'm going to take the 10,000, add it to 4,000, and divide by 2. That's 14,000. That's 7,000. So again, you could have gotten to 7,000 just by looking at the graph and seeing that 7,000 is between 6,000 and 8,000. I did it more algebraically or using arithmetic because I want to make sure you see the formula and how it works also, in case you don't have the graph like we didn't have in the first example. Nevertheless, we have our A value is 3,000, our vertical shift is 7,000. Now we need to find B. Okay, so from the graph, it takes 12 months. So period is equal to 12. And that makes sense because every 12 months, the number of visitors in a resort is going to repeat itself. It's going to peak in July and August. We're not going to have that many visitors, maybe in September, and it's going to come back up again. So depending on how they started, they're actually probably zero is probably June or May, and then every 12 months, the pattern repeats itself. So period is equal to 12. I'm going to take the 12 and set equal to 2 pi divided by b, because 12 is not frequency. 12 is period, and I need to find frequency knowing that period is 12. I'm going to cross multiply, get 12b is equal to 2 pi, divide both sides by 12, and I get that b is equal to pi over 6. I am finally ready to write my equation, and it's pretty long. Y is equal to the amplitude, which is 3,000, sine pi over 6t for months. Notice we're using t. It was labeled to us on the graph, both here and at the x-axis. Close your parentheses, vertical shift of up 7,000, which is our midline. And that is our equation for this graph. So we have two examples. The first example was a word problem, and we got all of our information from the word problem. The second example was a graph, which is also a word problem, but we got our information from the graph. Several ways of getting the amplitude and the midline. Really want to make sure that you're paying attention to the period and how to use period to find frequency. Okay, next we're going to do more, actually the next one is your homework. The day 7 homework is accidentally labeled as day 6 homework. So all of your worksheets have a day 6 up here. Can you cross that out and put day 7? That's your homework for the notes after here. If you want to wait and do the day 7 homework until after you've listened to the day 8 notes, you can do that because day 8 is just going to be more word problems, and I make sure that you need to do both the day 7 and the day 8 homework for practice. Hope all is going well. We are hopefully going to be giving you quizzes and make sure you know what's going on. If you are lost, please make sure you reach out and email me so I can help you answer any questions. So at this point, you should be working on the either day 7 homework, or you can play the day 8 video that gives you more word problem examples. Thanks. Bye.